Now, before I even get into it, I want to make one thing clear. I am very excited and optimistic for The Last Jedi, which we can now officially say comes out next month, since November is somehow here, meaning the wait really is almost over. And yes, I have expressed my concerns about what The Last Jedi may or may not be like in my other videos, that it could be anything from a clone of The Empire Strikes Back, or that it may ruin in some respects the character of Luke Skywalker, or that it might even make changes to the foundation of the franchise, like what the Force is and how it works. But until I've actually seen the movie, I obviously cannot and will not pass any type of final judgment on it. And no, I wasn't the hugest fan of The Force Awakens. Sure, I did like the movie for the most part, mainly enjoying the new characters we were introduced to, but I certainly had some issues with the story itself. But the main problem was more with me than the movie itself. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm old enough to remember having seen Return of the Jedi in the theater a great many years ago, and the moment the credits rolled on that movie after the first time I'd seen it, I was ready for episode 7. I was ready for the next adventure of Luke and his friends. And I think I would have been a very depressed kid had I known then that it would be 32 and a half years until we'd get the next chapter in this story. Sure, we got the prequels only 16 years later, which I did enjoy, but I always had more interest in knowing what happened next instead of what came before. And then, after that 30 plus year wait, I finally saw episode 7, and it just didn't live up to what I'd been imagining for almost literally my entire life. Then again, no movie could have. Even if I myself had written it and made it exactly how I wanted it to, I don't think I could have made a 2+ hour fan service of a movie that encapsulated everything I'd been wanting to see or thinking could happen for all those years. In other words, my expectations were just way too high, and there was no way they were going to be met. And by now, you might be wondering, what's your point? Thor, the title of your video said that you think all theories are going to be wrong. So does that include your own theories you put out there as well? That you don't have any faith in them anymore? Well, yes and no, because there's certainly a chance, and a very good one, that I'm going to be right about at least something. I've certainly put enough theories out there, or thrown enough darts at the board, to come up with at least one bullseye, or something close enough to it that, if I want to, I can hang my head on it and say, hey, I was right about that. But at the same time, a lot, or should I say most of what I've guessed at, is going to be dead wrong. And the main reason for that is because I, and pretty much everyone else who puts theories out there, comes at it from a fan's perspective. And not just a fan, but a pretty hardcore one. Hardcore enough to have a Star Wars channel on YouTube. And sure, one thing I try to do with pretty much all of my theories is keep them grounded, because that really is the key to being anywhere in the right ballpark with a theory. It has to be easily understood by, well, anyone, not just fans of Star Wars. Because whoever or whatever Rey and Snoke are, or whatever great secret is revealed in this next movie, it's likely going to be a new and original concept. One all of us, diehard fans and average moviegoers alike, are going to learn about together. Because this movie will be a failure, and hated by a lot of people, if when the secrets do get revealed, they are only understood by a fraction of those watching. I mean, imagine if it got revealed that Rey is the daughter of Sabine and Ezra from Rebels, and I'm sure there are those of you watching this video right now who are saying, who? Because you don't watch that show. So as cool as some of us would think that reveal is, a lot of people would be confused and utterly disappointed or even upset that for Rey's reveal to have any type of payoff, they would have had to watch 4 seasons of what they might think of as a dumb cartoon. Another thing you have to keep in mind is that just because you write or direct a Star Wars movie doesn't mean you're the biggest fan of the franchise. In fact, you watching this now may very well know more about Star Wars than J.J. Abrams or Rian Johnson, the directors of these 3 movies in the sequel trilogy. And that's not to say they're not both huge fans of the franchise. I think they obviously are. But I highly doubt they read all the novels, watch all the animated series, were massive fans of the old EU, or keep up with all the new canon. In other words, they're not Star Wars experts, and most of us fans would likely school them in a match of Star Wars trivia. And if you think I'm dead wrong about that these guys deciding the future of Star Wars must know all the small ins and outs of the franchise in order to have any hopes of writing and directing a good movie, keep in mind that Lawrence Kasdan, who helped write The Empire Strikes Back and The Force Awakens, didn't even seem to know who Darth Plagueis was when asked if that's who Snoke was. Which, if he wasn't just being coy and didn't really know who Darth Plagueis the Wise was, is a little disheartening, sure, but it just goes to show you don't need to know all the lore in order to write Star Wars. But a great wealth of Star Wars knowledge is not why they were picked to create these movies in the first place. They were picked because they are amazingly talented writers and directors, and because those in charge at Lucasfilm and Disney felt like they understood the essence of Star Wars, or what it is that makes them great and beloved movies. and any and all lack of Star Wars knowledge they have is greatly outweighed by their ability to make another beloved movie, even, and especially actually, if it's not one that relies heavily on everything that comes before it. And I know there are some of you thinking right now that The Force Awakens relied entirely on what came before, that it was just a rehash of the previous movies. But in a sense, it was supposed to be, and even J.J. Abrams has basically admitted in some of his more recent comments that that was the goal. It was a welcoming back to Star Wars, a refresher of some of the more basic ideas, and started a new story for a mostly new cast of characters. It was the basis of everything yet to come in this particular trilogy. Because even if The Force Awakens is the only Star Wars movie you've ever seen, you're going to be able, for the most part anyway, to understand what's going on in The Last Jedi. And if that isn't the case, if you need a vast understanding of everything that came before, Disney and Lucasfilm are going to have a hard time generating new fans and keeping this franchise going indefinitely. Because, to use a comic book term here, Episode 7 was a jumping on point, or a point in the story where you almost get a new start so that anyone can start reading or watching and start following along with the story. So here's the truth about The Last Jedi. It's going to be a pretty simple, straightforward, and easy to follow movie. Yes, there will be some type of twist in there, no doubt, but it'll be easily understood within the context of these last two movies. And if it's somehow not, and requires you to have a master's degree in Star Wars lore, then you're going to anger and confuse casual fans and average moviegoers, and make them feel like they have to invest their time in the other sources of canon to understand the stories the movies are telling. And though you might get some of them to bite and start delving into the other sources of canon, most of them are just going to say screw it and stop watching all these new Star Wars movies because they can't understand them anymore. So making these movies deep and dependent on all that has come before, just to please a small portion of your audience, the most hardcore of us fans, is a risk they're not going to take. It's just not worth it to them. And I can't help but think of Occam's razor here, which is a principle that basically says, don't make things more complicated than they need to be, or that when you have two competing theories, the simplest one is the most likely. And I think that sums up my thoughts on Episode 8 perfectly, because those in charge at Lucasfilm are not going to make this movie any more complicated than it absolutely has to be. As much as I love Star Wars, it's not the type of franchise where you should walk out of the theater after seeing a movie pondering what just happened and why. Nor is any theory that is too difficult to follow going to be right. So most theory videos really aren't so much theories as they are, wouldn't it be cool if this story goes in this direction videos? Because most theories are made by people who love and know Star Wars and want to see this intricately crafted story full of threads that tie back to all these other characters and events that create one giant masterpiece of a saga, a beautiful picture that can really only be appreciated by a few. They're not created by talented writers and directors with proven track records in Hollywood who may not have a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the lore of Star Wars, but probably love Star Wars in their own way and have a passion for creating movies that can be enjoyed by a broad audience. And no, I'm not saying I'm going to stop making theory videos or telling my own intricately crafted stories in the Star Wars universe. I do what I do here on YouTube because I love Star Wars and talking with my fellow fans of this amazing franchise. And yes, after The Last Jedi comes out, I'm sure I'll post a ton of theories about Episode 9, because I dare say making these theories and discussing them is a lot of fun for us fans who just can't wait for the next episode of the saga to come out, even though in the back of our minds, I think we all know they're going to be wrong. Well, that's all I've got for you this time, and now it's your turn to tell me what you think. Do you think any theories you've read or heard will turn out to be right? Or do most of them, when you really think about it, overcomplicate the story too much? Leave your comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.